how to submit the MLO courses through your CE portal. That's gonna be a little bit different than the general credits. So Andy's gonna kind of walk you through how to do that. If you have any questions, we'll take questions at the end of each section. So just raise your hand, and we'll get around to answering them. Andy, if you want to take it away. You're on mute.
There we go. Hi there, I'm Andy Berth. I'm one of the CE coordinators here at the Post Board. If you weren't in attendance for the general CE approval, please go ahead and find the video on our website and you can watch the walkthrough on that. But today we're just going to be going through submitting the mandatory learning courses, just because it can be a little tricky in one spot. I'm going to walk you through it. I developed this guide, which meant walking through several courses to make sure everything was accurate. So I kind of know this inside and out. For those that are just joining, again, we'll take questions at the end of each section and then at the end of the presentation as well. So that being said, let me just share my screen. So I'm not gonna walk through the guide. You have the guide. If you don't, certainly let us know. We can get one to you. But we will, the first couple slides here, we'll go over some of the key parts of mandatory learning, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but we're just going to review them anyway. So mandatory learning, it's required for license renewal, and it's couched in state statute. The boxes in blue there are the ones that we typically think about for mandatory learning. So we have autism, conflict management, mediation, crimes motivated by bias, crisis intervention and mental illness crises, recognizing and valuing community diversity and cultural differences to include implicit bias. And then we have the officer wellness credit. The officer wellness is, you'll see that the table there, it's not required for license renewal until 2027. So you'll see the renewal periods there. You do not have to have it for this year, for next year, but anyone renewing in 2027 will need to have that credit, and then it's required for everyone moving forward after that. Additional mandatory learning is going to be your in-service use of force training. The statute or rule does not provide a minimum credit, so it needs to be greater than or equal to 1 credit. The Post will not approve a course for A through K that is a 1 hour, 1 credit course. It just wouldn't be there. There's not enough time in there, and we haven't had anyone submit that. So agencies usually do their due diligence to make sure that the proper training is done. Emergency vehicle operations course or EVOC is required every 5 years. And then a minimum of 4 hours of that must be in vehicle training, and it must be 8 credits. So 4 of those need to be driving. And then this new school resource officer training is only required of peace officers who are assigned as an SRO, and that must be completed every 3 years. Before we move on to the application process, any questions on the mandatory learning objectives or anything that we can clear up? Okay. With that, let me move over to this screen here. Everyone's able to see the portal. Sarah, you see that on your screen? Okay, good. So I've already logged in via Minnesota e-licensing. I've gone in, I've clicked on course applications, and this is where we're going to start our courses. If you've been submitting them as general, you know this, but this is where we're going to start. You'll see down here, these are a lot of the test courses that I have, but this is what it would look like if you had courses in a pending status that you've submitted, or in a draft status, or approved pending, which we'll go over. But I'm going to start a new mandatory learning objective course. So I'm going to hit next. I'll verify that the phone number is correct. I have no alternate, no extension. And then we'll add a course title. Type here, whether it's a course or a conference. We're going to select course, and then we'll select next. All right, so if we open up this action drop-down box, right now there's only these options. Once the system recognizes you've done a mandatory course, it'll add in a couple more, and we'll see that as we move forward. I don't need to change any application information. I'm good with what I've titled the course. My phone number is good, and I want it as a course, not a conference. So the first thing we're going to need to do, and that's why these are in order, is to add, modify categories and credits. Now we're going to add the learning category. And what you need, the best way to think about this is in a hierarchy, your learning category is going to be those mandatory learning objectives. So autism, conflict management, mediation, etc. Those are the categories. So that's the first thing we're going to add. And I'm going to go with conflict management and mediation. We'll do this for 4 credits. And then I'll click Save and Next. So the system has recognized that you're doing a mandatory course, which then pulls up the learning objectives, which is the next step down in that hierarchy. So these are, if we take a look at a mandatory learning objective, and perhaps just for demonstration's sake, if we pull up conflict management mediation, this is going to be our learning category. The learning objectives are what's listed in that first. So number 1, that's the learning objective. Anything listed under that is performance objectives. And you'll see that we had to assign 1, 2, 3, 4 to this, because we can't have just round bullets to select. But these are going to be the performance objectives, and that's going to be the next thing that we select. So I'm going to select conflict management and mediation 1 and 2. If I wanted to select all 4 of these learning objectives, I could just click this box here. But I just want 1 and I want 2. So I'll select those. And it does give you a description, so you don't have to look back as far as what that is. It might be helpful to have it up with you, but we have included all that language in there so that you do know what you're selecting. And the same thing for for the performance objectives is, well, we have the description on what that is. So I've selected 1 and 2. Now, sometimes it does it backwards, and it'll ask you to do learning management or performance objectives for 2 and then 1. And sometimes it'll ask you to do it for 1 and for 2. I don't know why. That's a bug that we are trying to work out, but it doesn't change anything. It's just annoying and requires a little bit of attention. But I'm going to go ahead and select learning objective 1, and then I'm going to do A1, and I want A2. And you'll see within the box here, if I make sure that my cursor is in the box, you can scroll down. If you're out here, it'll just scroll the page. But you can scroll down within the box here. We'll do save and next. Now it says You selected 2, please select your performance objectives for 2. We'll do A and B. Save and next. Okay, so now I have conflict management mediation. Credits are 4. If I go up to course summary, it'll show that I have conflict management mediation 1 and 2 selected here, and they populate here as well. We'll go back to the approval process. Now, we'll pause there just for any questions that you may have on adding learning or performance objectives. Okay, seeing none. I am just going to, sorry, let me just cut this over so I make sure that I have this up on my end. Cutting over to the performance objectives and from the guide. I just want to point out that these performance objectives, all of them are going to be required, or these learning objectives, all of the performance objectives are going to be required. So it's typically almost all in use of force for handgun qualification. All of those need to be in there. Minimum 50 rounds, firing from various distances, strong hand, support hand firing, and firing from behind barricade. That's going to automatically be selected. And we'll add use of force in there so that you can see that. But emergency or evac courses also, you have to have the classroom training and the in-vehicle training required. There's in-vehicle training required, in-vehicle training recommended. They will already select everything because you have to have all of those. Let's exit out of this, go back over here. So it's saying, how do you want to continue building this? Do I want to add another learning category or modify a learning category? I'm going to add another learning category. We'll add use of force to this. And we'll scroll down to use of force. And we'll say we're doing 3 credits. Okay, now it's going to populate all of the learning objectives for use of force. So we have A through K. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to select GH, J, and K, just to walk you through what it looks like. It'll notify here all performance objectives are required for use of force G. And those are all listed over here. So I'll select that. Now, when we get to H, there's H1 and there's H2, H1 shotgun, H2 rifle. We'll do H2 rifle. And again, it has all of them already pre-selected for you. And then we get to J1 or J2. So your low light or your adverse weather. Again, A, B, and C are already selected in there. Those have to be chosen. And then under K, all performance objectives are required for use of force K. They are not all populated. An upgrade that we'll need to get in here. So you'll need to, if I try just to select K1, it's going to error out on me. It's going to kick me back and remind me that all of them are required. So I'll click all of them. All right. Now, within In one screen, there's the combination courses, which is just a matter of it being a mandatory course with general. And it's in there because sometimes a lot of training might have a use of force course, and then they'll do ballistic shield or active shooter training afterwards, or sim gun training. So the combination course is just simply going in and adding one of these general CEs that you're doing within that course. So I'll add threat assessment, which is a not a mandatory learning objective. Select next. I selected one credit, and then now that's in there. So you see it's built out here. It's going to list this top box. I have 7 mandatory learning objectives. 4 of them are conflict management mediation. 3 of them are for use of force, and 1 is for threat assessment. I'm just reviewing the guide here so that I can stay on task. Okay, so modify learning category. I need to change something. On really what you're changing here is the credits. So if I select conflict management mediation, at this point, if you're just going to change the credits, we don't want to check this box. That'll trigger a different flow. It's going to take you through. You just want to leave it alone. Don't check that. We'll change this from 4 credits to 3. And we'll click Save and Next. So I'm happy with what I have here, 3, 3, and 1. So I have a 7 credit course. All right, then we're going to go back to draft screen. Now, the next thing on our list here is adding and modifying the learning category. And with that, I'm going to skip over and bring the PowerPoint up. And I'm going to take a sip of water because this is going to require a lot of talking. So this can get a little confusing just because the way that all of a sudden you think one thing's going to pop up and something else does. But really the only things that can be modified, you can add learning objectives, you can remove learning objectives, you can add performance objectives, or you can remove performance objectives. Those are the 4 tasks that you're doing or are able to do in the modify learning category flow within the portal here. You can do a lot of these, and once you get proficient, you can do add and remove. You can do all of these simultaneously, but this is just going to outline how to do each one individually just to keep it more simplified. And within the guide here, you can certainly check or click here to move to either of those. So the first one that we're going to go over is the add learning objectives. I want to move this over to a different screen. So in the same, we want to add modify categories. So we're going to click back in there. So the same, now instead of adding, I want to modify what I have. And instead of adding, I'm going to select modify. And let's modify use of force. Now this is where you're going to check that box because I want to go in and I want to modify the learning, either learning objectives or performance objective that I've selected. And it's going to ask you for the credits. I initially wrote 3, so I'm going to keep 3. I don't need to change that. And I click Save and Next at the bottom. Now it has this letting you know that do not pause or leave this tab before completing all screens. You just don't want it to time out. That doesn't mean you have to be glued. You can probably get up and walk away for 5 minutes or so. But you don't want to just leave this open for the rest of the day. If you do need to back out of this, the best way to do it is, or if you clicked on this and you didn't mean to, there is no back button. The best way to do it is just click your sponsor license, and that'll take you back to your portal dashboard. You'll have to just find your draft again and then go back in here. So if you do need to get away or whatnot, click that and then come back to it later. So the first thing we're doing is modifying learning objectives. So I want to check this box to add or remove learning objectives. So I check this box. When I do that, two tables appear. We have add learning objectives and we have remove learning objectives. Remove learning objectives we'll get to later, so we'll just focus on adding learning objectives. So this is going to list everything that you did not select. You see that G, H, J, and K are not available here. So the system is asking, okay, you want to add, these are the ones you didn't previously select, which ones would you like? So I'll say that I want to include A. I'll go down, I'll click Save and Next. Now it jumps up and it's asks if you want to remove performance objectives for use of force. I don't want to do that right now. This is where it defaults to for each flow is to remove. So we'll skip that. As it says here, if you do not need to update learning performance objectives on a given screen, just click Save and Next without making any changes. So in this instance, I'll click Save and Next. Now it's going to ask me, because it's checking, making sure you don't want to change anything. Do you want to add performance? Now it's looking back as to what I've already selected. You selected J. Do you want J2? No, I don't. So I'm going to click Save and Next. You selected H. H1 is also available. Would you like that one? No, I'm not including that. So I'll click Save and Next. Now it's going to get me to A, which I've selected to add. And to keep things simple, I'll just say that we're going to add A1 in here. And that's the performance objective that I want to add. So I added a learning objective. Once you say I want a learning objective, as long as there's a learning objective or performance objective associated with that, it's going to trigger you to have to add performance objectives. Now, there are some learning objectives in other categories that don't have any performance objectives. It'll just take you through and you'll be like, wait, it didn't show up. Once you get back out, you'll see that it's populated because there's no performance objectives that need to be selected. So I'm going to select A1, Save and Next, and my changes to learning performance objectives for use of force are complete. So then I click Next, and I'm back to my building screen as far as if I want to add a learning category or modify a learning category. So we'll pause there for any questions on adding learning objectives. All right. So seeing none, let me again pull this up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on to remove learning objectives. So the same thing as before, we're going to select modify, open from the draft screen under action. We're going to select modify learning category. We're going to select the category that we want to modify, and that's going to be, we'll do use of force again. We'll click this checkbox because we need to get in there and remove learning objectives. I still want 3 credits. That hasn't changed. And I'll click Save and Next. So from here, we're doing learning objectives. So we need to click this to open up. And now we'll move down to that second table, which is remove learning objectives. Now, if you remove a learning objective, it's going to remove all of the performance objectives that are associated with that. And if you've gone in here after you've already created any course content, it's going to delete any course content as well. So you want to make sure that you do, in fact, especially if you have course content, that you want to make sure that this is what you want to do, because it can't be undone once you selected that. So I've changed my mind and I want to keep this simple. So I'm going to remove K, J, H, and I'll keep G in there. And I'll click Save and Next. It's again going to take me through, do you want to remove performance objectives for use of force? You don't need to do that because it would already have done that for you for the ones that you've removed. So if I check this box, you'll see that only A1 is now available. And G has all of them, so you can't remove them. That's why it doesn't populate. So it's asking if I want to remove A1. I don't. I'm not going to do anything with removing performance objectives. So I'm going to click Save and Next. Again, it's saying, hey, you selected A. Do you want to add any more? No, I'm good with A1. Thank you. And we'll move on. And my changes to learning performance objectives for removing are complete. So if I go back in here under course summary, and it only displays so many at a time. So it has conflict management mediation. So if you get confused as to why it's not in here, or if it hasn't populated, this is a safe place you can hit refresh, let the system catch up, or repopulate. So now we can see that I have AG, and it should have removed J. It's saying it here, but you can see down here that I have A1 and I have G, and those are the only ones that are selected. If you really want to get in, you can go to categories and content, and the learning under categories and credits will go in under use of force. And it does show that A and G are here. The system just hasn't caught up with itself quite yet. So hitting or selecting the refresh screen a lot of times will help you update that information. So we will back out of here. We'll go back to the approval process. Any questions on removing learning objectives before we move on to the next item that you can perform? Okay. So the next item is adding performance objectives. So we want to, again, add, modify categories and credits. What do I want to do next? I want to modify what I already have. And this time, let's say I want to modify conflict management and mediation. Click that box again. Conflict management mediation. I have 3 credits requested. I'm going to keep that the same. And then I'll go to Save and Next to advance. We're not modifying the learning objectives, so we don't need to check this box. We'll just skip this part by clicking Save and Next. Remove performance objectives. Nope, I don't want to do that. So I'll click Save and Next. Now add performance objectives. Okay, it's saying I've selected 2. This is where it's kind of working backwards. So I had selected 1 and 2 to begin with. So conflict management and mediation, which ones do I want to add? Say that I wanted to add C to this. Click Save and Next, and my updates are complete. So that's adding performance objectives to a learning objective and category that I've already selected. Any questions on adding performance objectives? Okay, seeing none. The next action that we can take with modification is removing performance objectives. We'll go back into conflict management and mediation. We'll check this box. I still want 3 credits. Save and Next. I don't want to modify the learning objectives, but I do want to remove performance objectives. So now it's listing everything that I've selected. So I've selected conflict management and mediation 1, A1, A2, 2, A, B, and C. So let's say I no longer want to have A2, and just to keep this simplified, we'll just keep A1 under 1, 2, and we'll remove these 2. I changed my mind on adding C, so we're going to take those out of there. Now it's coming back. It's saying, okay, do you want to add anything? The ones that I removed are back in there. So basically, did you change your mind? Or the other ones like E and F, do you want to add those? No, I do not. Click Save and Next, and those changes are complete. So now if I go back in here, if I go to course summary, and I see down here that it has the ones that I selected is accurately displayed. And I do recognize that these should be gone, and they are not. So I don't know, Sarah, if you want to take a note on how we can look into why those are still appearing in that table. And we'll talk with the developer and getting that fixed. But as far as what it's going to affect is adding the course content. It's only going to ask me to add the course content for the ones that I've selected. So I have my mandatory learning and I have my general learning. And those are the items that I'm going to need to add course content for, except for as an accredited sponsor. When we get to this general, you won't need to add anything for that. It's going to populate it here because I'm not logged in as I can't create an accredited sponsor account because we don't have that option anymore. You're going to see it, but refer to your guide for accredited sponsors on what you need to do there. So we'll go back to the approval process. I've already added, modified my categories. The next step is removing categories and credits. This is just kind of a wholesale. This takes everything out. I don't want to do, I've decided conflict management mediation isn't what I'm going to be including in my instruction. Or use of force or threat assessment. If you remove a category, it's wholesale removes everything. The learning objectives, performance objectives, any course content, all of it is going to be deleted, and it can't be undone. So you need to be 100% sure that this is what you're doing, especially if you have course content already created. We'll remove threat assessment out of here. Just select it, click remove. Simple, that's done. Any questions on removing categories or categories and credits? Okay. So the next step, we've done one, two, and now we're on to 3 is to add, modify course content. So select that and click next. Now this course overview, this is just a brief synopsis of your course. This kind of just is a place for you to succinctly indicate this is what this course is covering. These are, the goals and objectives. It isn't a place to put your learning or your lesson plan. Just a brief synopsis of the course and its goals and objectives. And that's required. That is a required portion there. It's also a good place, and really the only place to put your course timeline. If you certainly can put it when you add. It's tough to put it with mandatory courses to include it in the portion where you add the course content. So this is a good place to do a course brief synopsis, and then also add, you know, if we're 0800 to 1000, we're covering conflict management, mediation, and mediation. Can't type today. 1, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just laying out the course, especially if it, and only if it's over 4 hours. So if it's 4 hours or less, you don't need to worry about this, but this is where you should add. If it's over 4 hours, this is where you should add your timeline. And we are at, I forget how many credits, 6 or 7. So timeline for course here. All right. So once that is completed, we're going to take action on the categories below, and I want to add course content. So I'm going to, the other option is to modify, which we'll get to, but I want to add course content. Once I click that box or that drop down, this one's going to appear. And which one do you want to add modify course content for? Now it's going to separate it out by the learning objective. So you're going to add your course content for the learning objective and its performance objectives. And we'll see that on the next screen. So it lists for you here again what the learning objective is for conflict management mediation 1. And I've selected 1A. It's asking to discuss how mutual trust, respect, and cooperation are promoted through treating people fairly and with dignity and respect. This is where you're going to add the content of your course that supports and shows how it's meeting this here. You don't want to just do this and do a copy and paste. That's a surefire way to have it sent back. We already know the what. This is the what. We need to know the how. So how is the course meeting? How is your content in your course meeting this? What are you doing that is covering this? So we would just add course details. and content demonstrating how the learning and performance objective is being met. If this needs to get larger, right down here in the bottom right, you can take this and you can open this up and make this larger. Now, this does not support rich text. So there are no bolds, there are no underlines. It will take bullets, so it will take bullet points, but it won't take anything like I said, bolded text, underlined text, italicized text. So what I would recommend is typing it up first in a Word document, and then copying, pasting it over if you want to make sure that you don't lose this. Let's say you had to walk away and your computer restarted or something happened and you didn't click next to save it, it's going to be lost. So kind of like the old packet writer where everyone wrote if you use that report writing system, everyone wrote their super long reports in Word and then copy and pasted them over. Same deal here. Adding rich text to this is one of the enhancements that we plan to incorporate in the future. This currently, though, this is what we have in the current state. So I apologize for that because I like rich text and being able to select bold and bullets, etc., which it should be across the top, but it's not. But this is just a plain text field. So if you do type it, copy and paste it as plain text. Is going to be the best way to do it. And then kind of go through, you'll probably have to adjust paragraphs where they break or bullets or whatnot. But that's my hint and best practices for you in doing this. So I've added my course content here for conflict management and mediation 1A. Next. That was the only learning and performance objective that I selected for conflict management mediation. So I'm finished there. And you'll see down here that it's drafted pending. Close that box. You'll see that it's drafted pending. These are not started. So it lets you know how far you are within the process here. So now I need to go to 2.
Andy, can I stop you just 1 second? Just got a quick question. This is Sean.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
So looking at like where you add in how are you going to measure learning or how the students are going to learn on those objectives, like I'm looking at a lot of the use of force A ones. A lot of those are going to be covered in like a classroom discussion through videos and other things. So they're all going to be this pretty similar details for how are you going to address those learning objectives. Would you just put the same thing? If you're going to cover them in 1 hour PowerPoint presentation with some activities, would you just put the same line in each one of those, like A1, A2, A3?
Yeah, I think that would be, as long as it's within the timeline, right? I can look back and I can see that, okay, within their timeline, they're doing A, B, C, and D. And then I look on the course content, we're covering this, and there's some detail on it, right? Not just a reiteration. That would be acceptable.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of stuff would be covered in the PowerPoint. If we're not submitting the PowerPoint, then I just won't want to regurgitate the entire PowerPoint onto that page, I guess.
Right. And under our previous the email process, submitting PowerPoints wasn't accepted anyway. There's just too much. That's too much for us to try to basically read the tea leaves on what you're doing. Having it spelled out here is the best way to do it. And yeah, I understand that, with use of force, ABC, a lot of that is all quickly covered. But what this is doing for us and for you is basically making a lesson plan where you can easily say, okay, 2A, this is exactly what I'm doing. This is how I'm covering it. And all the filter, all the fluff and all that in between there, is kind of weeded out. It's kind of like the Joe Friday, just the facts. Just tell me how you're meeting 2A. Sorry, I keep looking over at my laptop because that's where you're coming from, Sean. That's where the
Sorry.
speakers are. But no, you know, because when we're reviewing these, that's really what we're looking. You want 2A, okay, where is it in here, right? Where is it in, this 4-page lesson plan that you have? It's frustrating for you to make sure that you have everything, and it's hard for us to go through and try to find it if someone hasn't already said, on this, when they included their outline or their timeline, okay, in this instruction block, we have conflict management mediation 2A. Okay, great. Now, what do I see there? And then that content is there. This kind of just is the shortcut for that. So
Okay.
you're building the lesson plan, just giving us the facts on this is what we're doing. You can certainly have I'm sure you'll certainly have your more lengthy lesson plan. But as far as posts is on posts end, we just need to know how are you meeting it.
Okay.
And then once we see that and it's sufficient, and it's not just a regurgitation of the language, and it meets the intent of the learning or performance objective, then we could say, perfect, move on to the next one during our evaluation. Hopefully it speeds up the evaluation process as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So let me just make sure that I have everything for adding course content that I wanted to cover. There is no autosave feature. It's not going to save it. So if you want to save what I've written here, let's say, you have very long and detailed outline of how you're meeting this learning and performance objective, you always want to make sure you hit next. Hitting next will save that. And we'll see that when we go to go back in to modify. And that modify is just basically taking me back in to that course content. So Edify, we have to complete these to move on. So we'll just quickly select A1. And we'll get to G because I wanted to go over G. So handgun range exercises is not within my authority to change this, but if I could, I would change this to handgun qualification because that's exactly what this is. And that's the only thing that G can be approved for. Same thing with H1 shotgun, H2 rifle. They're qualification courses. So as you see here, it has 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and then 2, 3, and 4 all listed for handgun. The officer will fire a qualification course consisting of no less than 50 rounds, close encounter shooting, shooting from cover, reloading techniques, weapon reaction hand shooting, firing from close range, medium range, and long range, and including a minimum proficiency score to be obtained for successful completion. Now, initially this was broken down because we wanted it to be more, we wanted it to be the same as the other ones. The problem is that it's difficult to write your course of fire by going AAB, 1A, and then 1B, and then 1C. There is a matrix that we had hoped to include where you can just type in how many rounds are you doing? We're doing 75. Close encounter shooting, check, shooting from cover, and then you're good to go. But for here, just as previously, you'll have to include your course of fire. So again, just adding the course of fire. What it is that you're doing. Okay, we're firing 75 rounds. Here's we're firing from 3 yards. So there's your close encounter shooting or point of contact. So you're doing contact shooting against the target. So contact shooting 3 yards. Then we're firing from 5 yards, moving back to 10, and then going to 25, and then we're going back to 50. And within let's say within that medium range where you're at 15 yards, we're doing, firing with the firing with your weapon hand, so your dominant hand, and then also switching over, firing with your support hand. Perhaps at the long range or at that same medium range, they're getting behind a barricade and having to fire, from left side, right side, over the top, which will also include the shooting from cover, or which is the shooting from cover or barricade, and then including a minimum proficiency score. So the officer or deputy, must meet, 85% or whatever it is that you have for your agency, in order to pass the qualification course. So I'll just add in here, course of fire. Any questions on G? And this will be the same with H1, H2. It's just the course of, and J1 and J2, the course of fire. It doesn't break it down for you to say, yes, we're doing gloves, for adverse weather for J2, or, Ramsey County. I think Ramsey County here, the best one I've seen is where they had to dip their hands into an ice bucket, in order for a certain amount of time, so that, that feeling and that ability to manipulate your hands was affected. But adding that sort of stuff in there is going to be necessary to complete this part. So, any questions on these firearm courses? Okay. So I've added my course content. We can see, okay, yep, I did it for conflict for CMM1. I did it for CMM2. My qualification course for handgun is done. And the content for how we're doing and covering use of force A is completed. There's nothing further I need to do here. So we'll click back to draft. Then we'll click next. So the next thing we need to do for a mandatory course is we need to add instructor qualifications. So we'll go to add, modify instructor qualifications. Here we'll list the instructor or instructors. At least one instructor needs to be listed. If there's more instructors that you can certainly just keep listing instructors. Here for each one, you're going to have to add. It's not going to check and say, okay, there's 5 here. Did I receive 5 uploads? It doesn't check that for you. So you're going to have to make sure that you have everyone's qualifications. And you can either drag and drop, or you can select it. You can just drop it right here in this drop zone. I'm just going to go ahead and click upload files. I have a sample instructor qualifications PDF that I want here. It needs to be in PDF or MS Doc, MS Word format. Those are the only 2 that are selected. You'll see a progress bar. You get a check mark. One of 1 file is uploaded. Now here's where you're going to panic. I personally would like to have seen it populate somewhere down here, and I know Sarah would agree, in some table. It does not. Again, an enhancement for the future, something that we asked for, but we had to cut some things out while they focused on making sure other things worked as they should. But if you go to your course summary, and if you scroll down, they're not listed. Again, don't panic. This is a safe screen, even though it does say do not click the back button or refresh your browser on this screen. You can. That's just on every single screen. If I go ahead and refresh it, and I might need to do it a couple times. I saw it there. So here it's saying sample instructor, that file is there. Okay. We're going to go back. We're going to modify instructor qualifications. We're going to add another instructor that we had wanted that we forgot about the first time around. So we'll add him or her. Let's select their qualifications. Click done. And then we'll click save. Now we're back to the draft screen. And just to see, I like to get in here and refresh. So that time, it's only listing the example instructor. I don't
You
know
didn't
why.
save after the first one. That's why.
Oh, did I not save after the first one?
No.
Okay, thank you. I thought we had an issue. So, okay, good. Thank you, Sarah, for catching that. So the instructors will be listed here. And then instructor qualifications, it's saying view files and notes and attachments below. I go down here, notes and attachments. And if I want to, I can open up the PDF to take a look, make sure I have the right one. Any questions on the on adding instructor qualifications or modifying them? Okay. It does say that modifying instructor qualifications. So once they're added, they're added. They can't be taken out. I think perhaps, Sarah, we can go in there and remove them. So if you accidentally added someone, we can go in and remove them. We have a little more permissions. But the only modification is just to add another instructor. So we'll go back. We were in course summary. This is the main draft page. We've done everything here. We're almost to the finish line. It is a mandatory learning course, so we need to add and modify a learning assessment. Again, as on the previous, on the paper or PDF form, we have these listed here for you as typically the assessments that are generally used. So in progress evaluations or exams, final evaluations or exams, or demonstrated proficiency / qualification. If there's something else, you can click other. You'll just have to provide a specification on what it is. That is your learning assessment. But for this one, I'll select demonstrated proficiency and qualification for my firearms course, and then we're just evaluating in progress. And that would be something like a conflict management mediation course or a use of force course where you're doing empty hand skills. And they just need to demonstrate that you're evaluating them throughout that, and then they're also demonstrating proficiency. So I'll select those two, save. I've done everything here, or at least I have. The system will tell me if I have not. So I want to go to review and submit. So now it's going to give me a complete rundown of what I am going to send. Note up here that unsubmitted applications will be canceled if they are not submitted within 30 days. So within your queue, if it's not submitted within 30 days, the system is going to go in and it's going to remove those. So make sure that you get those submitted in within that 30 calendar day window. So that's my sponsor information. I'm the applicant, my phone number, my email. This is the title of my course. This isn't going to appear there. That's just a placeholder for the system. It's a course. I want 6 credits. I have conflict management mediation. I really only have use of force A and G. I'm not quite sure why it's still including H and J, even though I have removed them. But then here it would list everything up until a certain point, and then you won't see it. It'll only list so many. So if you have a really long course, I don't know the number. I haven't counted to see, but at least we know that it's showing. It shows this here is just the learning objective, but it's showing 1 performance objective, 2 performance objectives, 3, and then 4. So I'm not quite sure how many it does display, but I know it doesn't display all of them because I've done a very lengthy course just to test and stress the system, and it doesn't display all of them. You'll need to go back in and review what you have drafted in your add and modified course content. So that's listing my mandatories. I had removed threat assessment, so I have no general CE courses on this application. I have my instructors, my learning assessment. This is what I've selected in progress and demonstrate proficiency. It'll just keep this please specify here. That was for the other. You can just ignore that. And then I want to make sure I review the sponsor agreement and affirmation. This hasn't changed from how it was listed on the paper application. But if you haven't reviewed it, it might be certain to know what it is that you're signing and affirming. And then you'll just go ahead and type your name. It already has the date for you on here. And then you could provide any comments or questions. The one thing I will say is there is a portion in the guide under important information that letting us know that this has been previously approved isn't going to do anything. There is no reapproval process. Each course is going to be if a course is expired or expiring, it needs to be submitted as a new course, and it's going to be evaluated on its current status, and the fact that it was previously approved. It really has no bearing on the current evaluation of the course. We get that a lot, and good to know, but isn't going to have any bearing. So any comments that you might have, you can add those there, but it's not a required box. And so then I'd go ahead and I'd click submit. So my application is pending. This is a confirmation number. This is just saying that this is an app and this is submitted. Please allow a minimum of 15 business days for us to review your submission. And upon review, notification will be sent via email. So anytime we take action on the course, as far as whether we've approved it, whether we've returned it for correction, you're going to get that information sent via email. It's not going to give you information saying post has opened up the course, post is evaluating the course. We don't have that sort of tracking the progress of what we're doing on it. But it will tell you if we've approved it or sent it back. Any questions on that process? Reviewing and submitting. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and move back over to this screen here. So there is a messaging function within the portal, and you'll find that. Sorry, skipped ahead. I want to close this other window here and just pull it up. You'll receive a message via. You'll be notified that Post has sent a message on a course, and I think I have one that I used to demonstrate. Let me see if. Here we go. So here, this is where you'd see.
You're not sharing your screen, Andy.
Oh, I'm not. I'm sorry. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Now am I? There we go. Okay, so this is the messaging function. Post has to initiate that. And then after that, you'll be able to write comments and chat back and forth, or post comments. It's not really a chat feature. But this is where if we did sent it back, saying, please provide additional course content details for conflict management mediation 2D. And then, you could write back, shocking, this has rich text. But you could write back and say, I submitted, I've added this and this, or I have a question on what it is. You also can certainly call us or email us still if you want further information or don't want to use this posting function. Application evaluation. Once you submitted it to Post, it's going to be tagged as pending. You'll receive an email notification, like I said, when we modify the status. So if we've approved or returned or denied. We'll go over if an application is approved. It requires a sponsor confirmation before it can be finalized. And I'll click back over because I have one open like that. So this application has been approved, but is pending sponsor confirmation. This is in order to make sure that you know what Post has approved it for, to avoid, oh, I thought it was approved for this. I taught it for this. The officers thought they were getting credit for this, and we could say, well, this is what it was approved for. So this is your opportunity to make sure that everything is accurate. So you want to make sure that you go in and review the course, what it's been approved for. So you go for course summary, and you see that this is what it's been approved for. I had submitted it for conflict management mediation 2. That's what it was approved for. Okay. And it was for 6 credits. We're good to go on that. And I'd hit confirm review and then submit. If there was an issue, or if I had the credits are wrong, or you have questions as to why it wasn't, you can add your questions or comments here. and then return it to the CE coordinator with those, or again, you could certainly pick up the phone or send an email and give us a call. But in this instance, I'm going to confirm the review and click submit. And once I've done that, this is when I'm going to receive my course number. So this is where you'll get this, and I can go to the course. Okay, whom it's been approved by, everything it has been approved by, or everything it's been approved for. This is all information on that course that I've submitted. Let's kick back over. If the application is rejected, so you'll see here, this application has been returned for correction. You need to make sure that you do the necessary changes within 30 days. If no action is taken on that course within 30 days from the date it was returned for correction, it's going to be deleted from the system, and you're going to have to reapply, start a whole new application over again. And from that screen, you'd click next to modify your application and make corrections based upon what the coordinator has indicated needs to be done. And the last thing, and this is just because this is part of the whole sponsor pack or approval, or I'm sorry, user guide packet. Affidavits of attendance is included in here, but as we said in the previous presentation, we're not going to activate this until after this renewal period, just to make sure that there are no hiccups. We don't want anyone not being or getting their license renewed because of either this system or mistakes that could have been avoided. So we're keeping our current process. So that ends the presentation and how to do mandatory learning within the portal. We'll open it up to any questions that anyone might have.
And I just have one thing I want to add on the approved pending. You might receive that email that was approved pending on a Friday, but if you don't action it till like the following Monday, that day you action that is the approval date of your course. So even though we finished reviewing it on Friday, any courses taught over the weekend before you went in and confirmed that review of it will not count for credit, because it's not until you click that confirm review and submit that you get that approval number and that course is actually approved.
Good point. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. Well, seeing no questions, if something comes up or you think of something after the presentation, certainly give us a call, or if while you're in there you run into issues or are confused, certainly, like I said, give us a call or send us an email. So thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time. Take care.